Welcome. And thank you so much for coming. And I'm very happy to be here and share some of my thoughts on the topic of, well, the changing portrayal of the Sericulture deity in later imperial China. I would like to introduce a poem written in 19th century, and this poem, it talks about the Sericulture deity in China, but it introduces more than one deity. So it actually makes me very curious about the plurality of the Sericulture deity in China. And why don't we just take a look at the poem?
Maybe we can close the shade because just the ones near Lou. Yeah. Yeah.
Take pause.
Yeah. I think just down. Yeah, just for the camera. Thank you. Okay.
So, as we can see, the Chinese original text at the bottom of the screen and the English translation, it goes as, my grandson back from a village, so he heard scholars talking about the Sericulture deity. Is the deity Tiansi and Leizu, or Lady Yuanyu and Princess Yu, or is it Jiugongxianpin Ma Mingwang? The discussion never ends. Why do I need to find the answer as long as I get blessing from the gods? Well, this poem is narrated from the perspective of a senior villager, and several deities' names showed up. But apparently he doesn't care about who is the real Sericulture deity. But it makes me ask myself the question, who are these deities? And why doesn't he care about it? And we can first take a look at the three names of those deities. They are Leizu, Lady Yuanyu, and Princess Yu. They were worshipped as the official Sericulture deities. They were worshipped by the empresses. But for the topic we're talking about today, for the folk religion, the most popular Sericulture deity actually is another one, and her name is Ma Tongniang, the horse-head maiden. So Ma Tongniang, she was derived from a legend in 4th century, and it tells a story about a girl got wrapped by a ghostly horse hide, and the two of them turned into a silkworm and hung on a mulberry tree. And Ma Tongniang, she was first worshipped in the 7th century in the western part of China, and then became popular also in the east side. For her portrayal, as we can see here, she is either depicted as a girl with a horse head, like this one, or a girl with a horse. Ma Tongniang, she's not the only Sericulture deity in China, but she's always the most popular one. She got great influence even to other Sericulture deities. For example, this one, Asvagosa. So Asvagosa, he's a Indian Buddhist deity, and back to India, he was not associated with silk production at all. He got the name Asvagosa. It literally means horse name, because it is said that the horses were so deeply touched and cried for him when they heard him giving the talking of Dhamma. So because he has the equine feature. In the 8th century, 3 monks, they were inspired by the Matonyang story, and they created a similar story for Asvagosa, and just to promote him as a Sericulture deity. And for his portrayal, maybe we can take a look at this picture here. This is Asvagosa. He's sitting on horse and with a lotus seat, and he has 6 arms, which is the distinguishing feature of Tantric Buddhism. And he has silk-related objects in his hands, for example, the silk skein and the scale, also real. Well, interestingly, in this picture, we can also see Matonyang here, the girl with the horse head, but she presents as a attendant of Asvagosa. So we can see the efforts the Buddhism they made. They're really trying to involve with the silk production industry, because in China, so many families they are involved in this industry, and to create their own deity in Buddhism is actually a brilliant way to attract more believers. But still, Asvagosa is not the only Buddhist deity who was associated with silk production. Here we have another one in the 13th century. On this painting is called Chengqi Geng Zhi Tu. It was drew in the 13th century, and actually it's now preserved in the Ferrer Gallery of Art in DC. And thank the gallery for offering me this picture. And we can see here's another Buddhist deity here. He also has the multiple arms, which indicates he's also a Tantric Buddhism. But what's different from Asvagosa is his fierce look with the 3 eyes and all the weapons in his hands, like swords and bow, which are actually not really related to silk production at all. So I think the best explanation for this deity is his Hayagriva, which is a wisdom king in Buddhism, because Hayagriva is the embodiment of another deity. The name is Avalokiteshvara. It's really a long name, but if we translate into Chinese, I'm sure every Chinese is familiar with it. It's actually Guanyin Pusa. So Guanyin Pusa was worshipped as a universal compassionate savior in China. And in some of the Matonyang stories, I found out Guanyin Pusa is the lord over Matonyang. So Hayagriva is the embodiment of Guanyin Pusa, and literally his name means the horse head wisdom king, so he's also related to horse. And we can also judge by some other of Hayagriva's portrayals, which are strikingly similar to this one, so we can deduce that this deity is Hayagriva. So right now we have 3 Sericulture deities. They all have this equine feature, and actually it became much more complicated. Linguistically, the conflation is happening. From 12th century, we can find out in so many ancient texts, the names, they are getting mixture, and names like Ma Ming Pusa, Ma Ming Wang, and also Ma Ming Wang Pusa, usually they all refer to her, Matonyang. the conflation is not only for the names, but also for the function and portrayal of the deities. Ma Zhongyang, of course, she is still the most popular Supreme deity, but she started to display some Buddhist feature. For example, in some folklore songs, she rides a horse with a lotus seed, and also she doesn't eat meat. Well, starting from the late Ming Dynasty, a great change economically, a great change happened, and it affected silk production a lot. So the traditional silk production in China is called Sericulture. It actually has two parts, and one part is silkworm raising, and the second part is silk producing. But from late Ming Dynasty on, the families, they pay more attention just to the silkworm raising and less attention to the silk producing. This happened because a lot of workshops were built and to make the fancy silks, so this just rapidly increasing the market demand for raw silk and cocoons. And so from that time, people starting to give Ma Zhongyang another name related to cocoon, because cocoons are becoming so important, and the name is Canhua Wusheng. So this name, Canhua Wusheng, it has two parts. For Wusheng, it literally means 5 cents. Well, it's 5 cents, but actually there's just 1 cent here. The name is just followed, it's just a popular deity's name followed by the Wutong pot. And Canhua, it literally means cocoon flower, so it's an auspicious name for cocoons. So we can see here Canhua Wusheng is actually a combination of the popular cult and also the economic change at that time. And also at that time, more male workers, they are getting involved in the silk production, and gradually a male Canhua Wusheng appeared, and he has the features acquired from Asphagosa and Herbriva. We can see his portrait here. So this is Canhua Wusheng, and he also has the multiple arms, and he has 3 eyes, and also in this picture he got the leg armor, which is acquired from Herbriva. And this one, in his lower forehand, he has silk-related elements like cocoons and silk in the hand. And for his upper 2 hands, he got the sun and moon symbols, which are customary symbols in Tantric Buddhism. But unfortunately, how exactly Canhua Wusheng appeared, the exact time, we still don't know yet. I hope we can find out in the future. But right now, if we look back at the poem which I introduced at the beginning of the representation, we may sense that the overriding concern of the silkworm farmers is just the income, and they don't really care about the pluralistic silkworm deities, and they don't care about the gender issue. They are willing to worship as many deities as possible to access the most efficacious one. And so in this case, we have traced several ways by which representations of silkworm deities were evolved in Chinese religion. For example, the Buddhism involving and also the economic factor, also the linguistic similarity. So in conclusion, I propose that the conflation over time, it resulted Canhua Wusheng sharing all the attributes from the other three supreme deities. So that's it. Thank you so much, and any comments or questions are welcome.
Not now.
Not now.
No.
Sorry. And so when I finish it, what should I
Yes,
say?
but what you just people clap and then you sit down.
Okay.
Okay, so now the chair gets up and welcomes all these other, and the discussant comes on, and we'll probably talk for at least 20 minutes. Then they open it up, and that's when people from the audience will get around to asking you some question about your paper.
And
So-
then I will stand up or sit
No,
here?
then you answer from there. You'll all have microphones.
Yeah.
And actually there'll be a microphone here as well. Yeah, so, okay, so the discussant talked, and now the floor is open for questions. Then people look kind of stunned and they don't say anything for a while, but then eventually somebody will raise their hand and ask a question.
So would all the speakers sit at the
Yeah.
head of the table, and people can ask anybody questions, right?
Yeah, and usually the chair will point at people and say, you know, whoever they are. So, and then they'll say, this is a question for Dr. And then, okay, so go ahead. 1, 2, 3, go. Questions?
I actually couldn't quite see at the towards the end when you had a picture of Canhua Wusheng with 4 arms, 2 up in the air. One is holding a moon, one is holding a sun. And what are the 2 objects with his lower 2 hands?
Lower hands?
There are 2 things. One is a cocoon. I couldn't. It didn't look like it.
One looked like a rule of set there.
Yeah. What are these 2 things?
Is it, you couldn't say it because maybe it's too light or it's just the picture itself?
No, I can't quite see what they are.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for those are the sun moon symbols, yeah,
Okay.
for sure. And this one is the cocoons. It's holding the cocoons.
Oh,
And this one, I believe, is silk skin.
that is silk skin.
Yeah, a skin of silk. And
Skin.
this one, I think, is silk. I'm sorry, what's the word?
Skinny.
Yeah, spool.
Spool.
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
silk skins, and they are surrounded on a spool.
Oh,
So they are all silk-related objects.
okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, I have a question.
Sure.
The connection with the horse. I know there's no evidence that proves what it is, what the explanation is, but I wonder if you have any theories of your own. And also, I would ask whether this association between a silkworm deity and horses is something that this is put together in China, or are these associations that go back earlier to like Harakriva?
I think it's in China because the first Matanyang story is derived from legend in 4th century. It's actually very early, and for the connections between the silkworm and horse, and there are like 2 explanations. And first is we believe that the silkworm, if you look at the silkworm, and you will find out it looks like it has a horse head, and also with a very soft body. And so I think that's why we connect the horse and girl together, and just to describe the Sericulture has a horse head and also a female body. And also the second explanation is that we believe that Sericulture they have some connection with a group of stars. It's called 天四. Actually, it is in this poem here. Yeah, Sericulture it shows here 天四. They are the names of a group of stars. It literally means heavenly for horses, and they are a part of the Scorpio. And when these stars they showed up at the zenith of the sky, it is usually the second month of the spring, which is the starting time for the Sericulture. So yeah, we believe that you can find a lot of evidence in Chinese ancient texts that describes 残马同气. It means the horse and silkworms, they have the same spirit or the same source.
We're practicing that. Okay, other questions? I'm the chair. I appointed the recent person and Alex.
Okay, I have a question for Dr. Wang, and one question is about the quote. Maybe I missed the information, but I don't know where the quote is from, what the date of the quote is, and who the author, and what's the importance of this quote. And the second question I have is about the connection between Matonyang and Buddhism in India. Because you mentioned something about the 4th century Matonyang actually influenced something in India, but I'm not sure how did that happen, and why, to what extent the mutual, or maybe mutual influence is going on at the time, and I hope you might explain a little bit.
Okay, so this poem is in the 19th century, and it's written by Dong Lijou. Actually, it's kind of nobody, but this poem, it was collected in some local annals, and so we can see it actually describes the Sericulture deities in that time. So I found it in the local annals, and I found it very interesting, and it really shows the plurality of the Sericulture gods that time. And I think maybe I mentioned it at the beginning, it's the 19th century.
Okay, so you said local annals, but which region?
Oh, in Zhejiang.
Zhejiang. Any township then?
I'm sorry?
So any specific place in Zhejiang?
He's very interested in Zhejiang.
Yes, Huzhou.
Huzhou? Is that in the city or in some rural?
Huzhou Fuzhi.
Okay.
Actually, Huzhou, they produced the best raw silk at that time. So when Canhua Wusheng appears, it got worshipped a lot in that part. So they think the cocoons are so important.
So you said the author is nobody, but how come that he gets into the Huzhou Fuzhi, which is an important official document?
When I say it's nobody, it's like he's not like so famous that everyone knows it. But his poem was selected in this Huzhou Fuzhi in the part of describing the silk production.
Okay.
So I think maybe this poem got selected because it has related to the silk production.
Okay, so is there a sort of anthology of poems and descriptions in the official document?
Yes.
Okay.
But the authors, maybe they are not so famous,
Okay,
not so
I see.
huge. Did that answer the question?
Sure. And about the second question about the...
Yeah, sure. So, Matonyang, actually what I mean is not not in China. In the Matonyang, her influence to the Buddhism is not happened in India. It just happened in China because Matonyang, she's a supreme goddess in China, and when the 8th century, when the Tantric Buddhism they came into China, they want to create their own supreme god just to attract more believers, and so they write the Matonyang story. They were inspired by Matonyang story, and they just wanted to find out their own deity, and so Asvagosa, because he has the same equine feature, because he has a background story related to horse, so it makes him just a perfect deity to create a supreme story similar to Matonyang story.
Okay, and Alex.
I was wondering if you thought there was any significance to the kind of the transition from Matonyang to Sanhua Husheng, from female to male, that kind of gender transition, or is that a product of like the deliberate choice from Buddhist missionaries, or do you think maybe the female aspects were just kind of gradually crowded out by kind of the male characteristics of the gods she was conflated with?
I think for the long time, Matonyang, she is always the most popular deity. Although we have Asvagosa and Hayagriva, they appear, but they didn't exist for a long time because Sericulture is a job that we think is usually it's a women's job. We have this saying in China, 男耕女织. It means the men they working outside on the farm, and the women they work at home and they just weaving. So although we have Asvagosa and Hayagriva, but the women they still they just get used to worship the female deity. And of course, the Matonyang, she gradually she got some Buddhist features, such as she has a lotus seeds where she doesn't eat meat, everything, but she still kept her gender. She's still a girl. And in the late Ming Dynasty, there's a great change economically because a lot of male workers they got involved in sericulture. So I think that's why the male workers they would like to worship their male deity, and that can explain this transition.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I think I have two questions. First of all, I want to ask about the India deity is influenced by the Matonyang,
Yes.
and from the picture you post on your PPT, I consider that deity is a male figure. I wonder is there any interesting part in why they are influenced by Chinese deities, but they changed the male to female, the female to male. And another question is, since this poetry were 19th century, and you introduced our the cocoon died, 昙花无胜 in 13th century, right? Is it in 13th century?
昙花无胜 is in 19th century.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then there's no second.
So maybe the timeline is not seems so clear. So maybe that's why you feel confused.
I sorry to disturb you. The second question actually is the deity Tiansi and Lei Zu or Lady Renyu or Chinese Yu, are they the variety of 昙花无胜normal people worship them, or it's a later transition of the deity 昙花无胜? I mean, since they happened in the same century.
Okay, the first question, the Asvagosa, yeah. The monks, they inspired by the Matonyang story to create their own Silkworm deity story, and to apply that on Asvagosa. But they already have the deity Asvagosa, and he's a Bodhisattva in Buddhism, so he was a male, and he have been a male for a long time, so they didn't change his gender, just create a similar Silkworm story and to promote him as a Silkworm deity. I don't think they need to change the gender, because the Bodhisattva it's already a male. Lei Zu and Lady Yuan Yu and Princess Yu, actually they were worshipped as the official goddess before Tang Dynasty. For example, Lady Yuan Yu and Princess Yu, they were mainly worshipped in Han Dynasty. And Lei Zu, her story came earlier, and she was also worshipped, start from Beizhou, northern Zhou, and they actually worshipped much earlier than Changhua Wusheng.
Dr. Wang, are any of the ceremonies involving Silkworm deities